name is Karen Blakeslee, and I am the East Divisional Manager for PrimeLending. So that really just is a fancy word for meaning that I get to have the super fun job of working with all of our teammates east of the Mississippi. So I have been at PrimeLending, it's hard to believe, 15 years now. And there's so much that I really love about this company, but I would have to share that number one thing is the people, right? We all do mortgages the same way, essentially, in this industry, and we all get to work with clients and referral partners. But man, the people here make it not just super fun and cool, but they just make it work. They make it work every day. And I have other exciting news to share, Al. I am a brand new grandparent as of yesterday with a new grandson. So a big welcome to Nehemiah Harris.
That's not your first. That's not your first grandchild, though, right?
No, it's number 5. Can you believe
Holy
that?
cow!
And I look so young. How's this even possible? Anyway. So lots of kids, lots of grandkids, and a job and a career that I love. So that part is a blast. What about you, Al?
Well, I'm Al Velasco. I am the West Division leader here at PrimeLending, and I think KB and I now, we've been working together, KB, for almost 20 years, right? 15 years at PrimeLending, and then 5 or 6 years maybe at our prior employer.
Yeah.
So we've known each other for many, many, many years. And as you'll find in watching this podcast, we know much about each other, and sometimes it's hard to get us to be quiet. So that'll be the challenge on this, I think.
Well, that's what happens when you put 2 salespeople together, right? Well, you guys, welcome officially to East Meets West. This is our brand new podcast, and really what we want to do is just celebrate the unity and the collaboration and really the powerful bond that emerges when East and West combine forces and achieve greatness. And so welcome. We're excited to kick this off today.
Yeah, so a big part of this podcast, and before we kind of jump in here, so Katie and Jacob, who are, we'll call them our producers and our executive producers, set us up and put a lot of work into planning this. And one of the first things they did is they sent us headphones and microphones, which you can't see because KB's not wearing her headphones. And I'm convinced, she says that it couldn't connect to her computer, but I'm convinced it's because she didn't want to ruin her hair. But when I first saw this really cool microphone that they sent us, it reminded me of something. And although KB, you and I have worked together for 20 years, I think I'm going to tell you maybe something you didn't know about me. And in fact, prior to recording today, Katie asked me whether or not I had ever done a podcast before. And I told her that I've never done a podcast before, but you know what my first job was when I got out of college? Take a guess.
Okay.
I was actually in college.
With that microphone, you had to be in radio. Were you?
I was a disc jockey. Does it surprise you?
Awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, what kind of music are we talking about?
I was a disc jockey at a radio station in Chicago, and I wasn't a very good student, so I'll share that. And in order to graduate from college, I had to put together in a communications class, I had to put together a radio show. And back then you put them on 8 tracks, which I'm kind of dating myself. So I did this radio show audition type tape, and I submitted it for a grade. And so for giggles, I decided that I would send it to a couple radio stations in Chicago. So I sent it to one of them, and they actually ended up hiring me. So there you go.
There you go.
So I've never done a podcast before, but certainly have been behind a microphone for a little bit. So this will be fun to kind of get into it with, obviously a little different medium than that.
I love it. You have all the experience in the world. I'm not worried about this now.
I wouldn't say that.
Try to keep up with you.
But, the genesis of this podcast was actually really cool because, KB, you and I obviously spend a lot of time with the sales team. We spend a lot of time recruiting, and we're often asked, what is different about PrimeLending comparative to all of our competition? And I think one of the things that we we always have said in the 15 years that we've been here is that what makes us different is the people. And so over the years, we've tried to do certain things, different creative things to highlight the people that work at PrimeLending and their rich stories. And you and I have the opportunity to be in the branches, really on a weekly, monthly basis. And we get to meet, many of our teammates, and we get to hear their stories. And the stories are just amazing, not only as it relates to their careers in the mortgage business, but just who they are, how active they are in their communities, what cool people they are, their families, their backgrounds that they come from. And we've always said, we've got to find a way to put a big spotlight on our people because we think they tell amazing stories, and it's really, the fabric of who PrimeLending is. And so we just want to tell the stories of PrimeLending. And so that's really what we're going to do. We're going to touch on industry things. We're obviously working in a crazy business right now. There's stuff happening really on a weekly and daily basis, and we're certainly going to give voice to some of those topics that impact the way that we all make a living. But we're also going to hopefully spend some fun time just getting to know each other. And that's really the genesis of East meets West.
I couldn't agree more, Al. I don't know of a single child that gets up in the morning and when their teacher asks them what they want to do when they grow up, they say they want to work in mortgage lending. So it means that we have this talented and really diverse group of people that work at the company, that get to work with our customers every day. And I can't wait to showcase some of their stories.
Yeah. So please know we're not gonna try to bore you with mortgage details every episode. We're gonna do some of that, but I think it's going to be a little more exciting than that. Not that the mortgage business is boring, though.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If any of you like roller coasters, this is the industry for you, right?
That's right.
But, and I don't care how corny it says, because you guys will probably hear me say it more than once. At the end of the day, man, we get to help people get into homes. We get to help change the direction of their families. And that is just wicked cool. Really, really cool. So today in particular, we are going to do a little bit more mortgage related piece because we're going to get to talk with Andrew Stringer, who's our guest speaker today. And Andrew heads up our secondary department. So that's really everything to do with the markets, right? So he's interfacing with the bond markets and the stock market every day and pricing the loans and selling the loans and all the pieces that have to happen so that we can even offer loans. But he is fantastic. You guys are going to love chatting with him. He's warm. He's funny. He's really smart. He can rhyme. I mean, this is not common in our business. So
he's almost a poet.
He is almost a poet. He really is. So you guys stay tuned because he is going to be our speaker. All right, everyone. Welcome to Herd's the Word. The herd is referring to not just what you're listening to, but it's referring to our buffalo herd, which is our mascot, Mo the Buffalo. But just want to talk to you for a second about something super cool we just rolled out at PrimeLending. It is a home loan tracker. It allows all of our customers to see exactly where their loan is at in the process and to upload their own documents as they have them ready to get over to their loan officer. And so we just rolled it out in September and customers are using it every day. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we've got the biggest home buying segment of the population that is coming into what would be traditionally a home buying age of like 25 to 35 years old that we have ever had in the history of America. And every single one of them loves their phone. Right? They love doing everything they can with their phone. So they can do this on their phone, upload everything that's needed for their loan, and it helps us go that much faster for them and gives them a lot of peace of mind as they can see exactly what's going on. Mortgage loans are fast, but they can be a little bit, got a couple moving pieces to them. So it's great when you can see what's actually happening. And Al, what is going on with our guest today? Who do we have?
This is going to be the segment of the podcast where we're going to bring on a guest. And again, as we said earlier, sometimes this will be mortgage related and sometimes it won't be, but we decided that because of everything that's going on in the industry that's impacting all of us, that we would ask Andrew Stringer, who is our EVP of Secondary Markets, to be our first guest on the inaugural podcast. And Andrew made the mistake of recently telling me at a meeting that he has been on several podcasts over the last couple of years. So we figured that we tap into his podcast expertise and have him on here to have a great conversation. But KB and I have gotten to know Andrew, and he's been a great new team member. He brings a really unique perspective to our company. And we think everybody's just going to really enjoy getting to know a little bit more about him. His background, he's been a head of capital markets, and I think he's been at Prime for what now, KB? 2 months? Something like that?
I was going to go with 90 days, but that might be too much.
Yeah, and he actually he was in our secondary department a number of years ago, so he's actually a boomerang employee as well. But he went to the school at the University of Texas at Dallas. He's a proud Eagle Scout, which for some reason I wouldn't have suggested that Andrew would be an Eagle Scout, but he's an Eagle Scout. That's a good thing because that's a great recognition. Has a family, so he spends a lot of time with his family. And another interesting fact about Andrew is that he's a guitar player. Like, who knew, right? So he's an Eagle Scout. He's a guitar player, and he plays the guitar at his local church. So obviously a man of many talents, but we think you're really going to enjoy our conversation with Andrew.
Yeah, he also has a giant brain, right? I mean, the stuff that goes on in his brain with regard to the really complicated part of our business, which is that secondary market, bond market piece. Man, it's just fun. It's just fun being in meetings with him and watching his brain run. So,
well, Andrew, welcome to the inaugural episode of the East Meets West PrimeLending podcast. You obviously must feel incredibly honored to be asked to be our first guest. Is it one of the greatest achievements of your career so far?
I assume I drew straws, so.
And you got the long one.
Yeah.
Yay!
Well, I was sharing in the introduction that you made the mistake at one of our most recent strategic offsites of telling me that you've been on several podcasts and you enjoy doing podcasts. So we thought, well, not only are you a fairly new member of the team, but you've got twice as much experience in podcasts than KB and I do. So it's a perfect fit. But we are thrilled to have you here, and obviously both KB and I have really enjoyed getting to know you as you've come back to PrimeLending, and so we're really excited to have a conversation with you. And obviously you're at the helm of the secondary department, which is kind of in the eye of the storm now with all of the different challenges that we're all facing, in the mortgage industry. And so I think it's a great opportunity to kind of hear from you, relative to the markets and where you think things might go. But before we get into that, so really kind of interesting, I'd love to know the genesis. So you're an Eagle Scout, right? Mm-hmm. And so how did
I can save your life, Al?
Yeah, there you go. Which is cool. So talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, I probably started in elementary, maybe second grade. It had a lot to do with probably my mom needing to get me out of the house and free her up from. I have a twin sister. I don't know if I ever told you guys that. So it was double trouble at our house, and so she got shipped off to Girl Scouts. I got shipped off to Boy Scouts. But you know what's really cool about the whole Boy Scout thing? I mean, outside of the adventure element and getting to build fires and do cool stuff, it completely prepared me for the business world. I didn't know it at the time, but every time you earn a rank in Boy Scouts, you've got to basically interview in front of very intimidating adults and, prove your worth and prove that you know what you're talking about. And that I did that for probably 10 years, in scouting before I got my Eagle Scout. And so, outside of the skills that I acquired, outdoorsman like. A lot of it is applicable in the business world, which is, pretty cool.
That is
For what it's
cool.
worth.
And you're a musician, you're a guitar player. So how long you been playing the guitar?
Almost as long as I've been in scouting, probably. I started when I was 9. I remember my dad, told me not to tell my mom because, Santa Claus and all, but he invited me out to the car. He drove this like 82 Cadillac. So it's a huge boat car, and like the trunk you could fit like 2 bodies in. The guitar was just sitting there like in its glory. It was like emanating a like aura as the trunk lid just opened up, and I was like, this is it. I've acquired my life's work of hobby right before my eyes, and I stuck with it. I actually play in my church band today. I still, my wife's been very gracious. She lets me steal away time from the family to go jam out, so it's pretty fun.
So we probably should ask you, who's your favorite band?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm a product of the 80s, meaning I was born. But my coming of age was definitely 90s grunge. So I'd say I'd probably have to give you top 3. I'm probably Red Hot Chili Peppers. Believe it or not, I like the heavier stuff. Rage Against the Machine. I'm a big and if I had to throw a third one in there, I mean, I'd go try and true it with the guitar side, Eric Clapton. I love Eric Clapton. So I'm balanced, but, if you do a 90s themed like playlist, I'm in a good headspace.
Nice. Very eclectic. No country music though, huh?
No, I will stab someone if they turn on country in my department.
Well, I guess
really feel?
That's good to know.
Note to self, man.
If it comes on in a public area, no big deal. But if I have control over it, it's going off.
So maybe last question, before KB gets a shot at you. So talk a little bit about your career in mortgage banking. How'd you get started? Maybe walk us through, your progression to where you are today.
Yeah. So, many people probably don't know this. I actually worked my way through college and graduated while I sat in the desk at PrimeLending. So out of high school, I was delivering pizzas. I worked for this pizza shop local. It's actually pretty renowned in Dallas. It's Campese's Pizza, owned by the mafia. Long story there. But I was delivering pizzas, and I had a buddy that, pretty polished guy. He had the internship, at this mortgage company. And I remember, sitting with him one day during the summer, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going back to college." He went to some school up north, and I just asked him a question like, "So who's going to take your job?" And he's like, "I don't know." And maybe it's the Eagle Scout in me. I just crafted a resume out of my coat pocket. Just be prepared, as the Boy Scout motto. And I literally, maybe it was in my pocket, but it definitely was in an inbox that forwarded him that day, my resume. And I got the interview. And kind of going back to what your first question was, I had literally pizza boy. I think I was a Tom Thumb grocery store checker, something like that. And I was still in college. So I had nothing, but I had Eagle Scout, and that Eagle Scout was what got me the job on the lock desk when I was 19 years old. And all I needed was an in, and the rest is history. I obviously eventually found my way to PrimeLending years later.
Man, does everybody remember that first resume when you're like, well, that took a minute. Now what do I do with the other 3/4 of the page?
So true. Skills.
Oh man, that is so cool, Andrew. So let's say that you're at a Halloween party, or you're just out at a neighborhood party, whatever, and somebody says, "Man, what do you do?" And you say, "Oh, I run secondary marketing for a mortgage company, PrimeLending." And they're like, they give you that blank stare, man. Like, what do you wish people knew about secondary marketing? They don't know.
Man. if I had like the power, this Halloween's theme is actually superheroes, so this would make sense. Like if I had one superpower, it would like to like use like some beam of light to like put education of secondary into people's minds. That's a loaded question. You know, it's I think most people think of secondary as this like magic ivory tower where we're just out there like trading bonds and doing really sexy things with the market and whatnot. I'd say secondary is way more about relationships, at least how I've come to know secondary. Secondary is working with business partners and, whether it's investors, whether it's other companies that are much similar to PrimeLending, and just trying to recognize the potential of those relationships, whether it's through product development or through pricing strategy. But a lot of the challenges we're facing here at Prime are not unique to anyone else. But it's the important thing with secondary is understanding that any of the challenges we're trying to solve for them on a regular basis. It's not this static, we take pricing, we take what we need for Prime, and then we send it to you guys. It's a constant evolution every day. It's how can we create better results? How can we navigate the current challenges? How can we position ourselves for success, which in tow provides more opportunity for you guys? And you can get into the weeds when it comes to how pricing works and, the sophistication of hedging and things like that. But for an LO to understand that it's all about the relational capital and the leveraging of us as it relates to our business partners, it's a constant day-to-day, how can we improve the environment we're presented with and execute to our best ability, which in turns help you execute. So that's probably what I'd give you in my summary on that question.
I love it. And that is, it's one of the things that make Al and I smile when we walk into a meeting with you is like, we're going to walk out at least a tiny bit smarter. We got a lot to go, a long ways to go, but it's because you do love to educate. And you also you remind me of like a human Rubik's Cube where you turn things around and look at them different ways. Like, what if we did this? What if we tried that? And that's just really, really cool to partner with. So Al and I knew you. I think you were more than 19, but you might not have been a ton more than 19. And when you were at PrimeLending before, and now you've returned, Al was thinking 60 days. I was thinking 90. We're probably both wrong. How long have you been back?
I started really the beginning of August. So okay. We're approaching the 90-day front, which I know was a milestone for you, Karen.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You'd expected X value proposition to be presented by now. How am I doing, Karen?
Those of you who can't see me who are just listening, I'm giving him a giant thumbs up. But what's it been like to come back to Prime, man?
I mean, I'll start with this. Like, I had the opportunity. I feel like for me, it was a game changer. Working under Scott Egan when I was here 10 years ago, to me, kind of established this understanding of what I understood was the best in class mortgage company. I mean, up until that point, I'd worked at other companies. I was privileged to get hired at Prime, but then just been given the opportunity to work under some of the best, leaders that I feel like are in the business. I was equipped with skill sets that I didn't know I was capable of, realizing because of that mentorship. And it ended up allowing me to spread my own wings, knowing that those leaders were going to probably play this out, and I was going to need to prove my own path and journey, which, eventually led to my departure. But, coming full circle 10 years later, kind of pulling different pieces along the way, to be honest, I tried to recreate PrimeLending everywhere I went. The first job I had was running capital markets for a different bank, a smaller bank at that, but a different one. And man, I was throwing all sorts of prime sauce into the pot, so to speak. And, you know, there was a recognition at one point that there's no recreating the secret sauce here, obviously. But now coming back full circle with this new recipe and my own spices that I get to kind of throw in now, it is it is an answered prayer for me. It is it's a realization of what I would say is my career's work coming to a head, and now being able to deploy kind of what I've kind of learned along the way with my own flair and my own understanding, and obviously having big shoes to fill at that. To me, it's so exciting. It's so inspiring myself. Like, I feel energized. I feel like I'm hitting the ground running, and even in the worst environment you could imagine, as mortgage, has been for the past at least, 15, 20 years, if not more. I still have this vigor that I want to add whatever value I can, and knowing that this too will pass, and I get to be back with my family that really helped create and really bring me up out of the ashes, if you will, and lock arms alongside. So I guess I just say I'm very fortunate, I'm very blessed, and very grateful. So,
Oh man.
Well, as you noted, so you joined us at a time that's just crazy, right? So the market's crazy. Lots of things we can't control. So let's talk a little bit, about the market and what's happening now, and maybe try to get some predictions. I know you hate to give predictions, but we'll play along with you and maybe provide our own, so that we'll all be wrong together. But so give us your quick take on what's happening in the markets today, and what are some things over the next 30, 60, 90 days that we should be paying attention to that might, give us an idea as how the market's going to shake out in the short term.
Sure. I knew this question was going to be given. I had an opportunity to read the bullet point, like, okay, I'll put myself out there. but I think if we can just start with just some of the first and foremost, like, elements to what's going on. Obviously, the music stopped. We've recognized that a lot of our environment is predicated off this artificial propping that the government has created when it, rewinding back to COVID. Ton of liquidity flooded the market, forcing treasury prices up, yields down, rates went down. And now we're kind of paying the penalty of all that free money, if, to say it bluntly. And what the Fed is doing is obviously trying to create an environment for us that is restricting the economy to where it slows things down enough to where inflation goes away. The byproduct is, by them slowing it down, they're forcing rates up. And so kind of where, to kind of take this to, well, what's going to happen next? I think we have to start with what's on the table right now. So, in fact, this week, and I don't know when this podcast is being published, so I'll preface that if this goes out next week, for what matter, this month, or the November 1st, is when the Fed is going to meet again. And so whether that's happened or not by now, the market's already accounted for the probability of what they're going to do with interest rates, is they're going to leave them unchanged. There is literally a 0% chance that the market's priced in from a probability standpoint that they're going to raise rates. Now, that would be at hand, you would think, a net positive for interest rates. But the reason that the Fed isn't going to be hiking is actually opposite of that, because yields are now up, as you've probably already felt out there, all-time highs, or at least dating back to 2007, where interest rates are topping 8%. The 10 years, right at or right under 5%. And because of that, the restrictiveness that the Fed was trying to create with hiking is now being done at the hand of the 10-year or the hand of treasury yields. So now the question is, what's going to happen, and how long are we going to have to stay here before some material erosion occurs in our economy? And I think the next 30, 60, 90 days will be very telling, because that's going to lead into Q1 and Q2 of obviously next year, where the market is already priced in 2 to 3 cuts. In fact, we were at 3, we went back to 2, and now we're getting back to 3. And just because I think we're already seeing some material impacts to this restrictive nature. So what that means as it translates to mortgage rates, if the market's pricing in 2 cuts, they believe that rates are going to be coming down. And if rates come down, it's because something has gone awry. And I say that because if you recall from the last Fed meeting, Powell communicated they weren't going to cut in 2024 at all. So the market putting out probabilities that they're going to be cutting says that this isn't sustainable, that something inevitably will break. Recession is the key to all this, and I think if we boil it down to an event that's going to cause interest rates to drop, it's going to be the word recession. And again, I won't get too more in the weeds, but to say some of the things that we're looking at as a precursor to what could lead to a recession are whether or not the yield curve uninverts, which it's getting really close to uninverting, which again could be looked at as a good thing. But the reason it's uninverting is because people are transitioning from the short term back to long term because they want to protect their money again, because they think that the volatility is going to drive down yields, and they would rather be locked into a higher yield long term. So that's what's causing some of this price disparity to already play out. And I'll land the plane here. If recession does hit, the whole modus operandi of the Fed, they say they're trying to taper inflation, but what they're really looking for, and this is an opinion, what they really are looking for is unemployment. And the fact that the jobs market has been so resilient up until this point has allowed them to do what they've done with the yields, right, with hiking rates. So in effect, a recession is going to impact unemployment, and in which case unemployment will drive down inflation, and in which inflation is driven down, rates come down with it. And then we end with, hopefully, and this is where you want me to put myself out there, rates should be in the mid 6s by Q2. There.
That's a pretty big hedge there, but we got something on the record anyways.
Yeah. Andrew, I remember you telling me about a month ago, I don't remember where you and I were at, what meeting we were at, but somebody said, do you think, are you most concerned about rates going up or rates going down? And you said, man, what I'm most concerned about is the Fed's not doing anything, and this whole thing just kind of trailing along for months and months, and sort of in limbo. And honestly, it's exciting to hear that that we could see some movement, that maybe we're through the worst of this, and coming out the other side in the next quarter or two.
Yeah. So Andrew, curious about one other element to get your comment on. So KB and I have been in this business for 30 years, and we've seen all kinds of different cycles, and we've been paying attention to CPI and all the economic indicators that usually drive the 10-year and interest rates. And this particular period seems to be really different from the perspective that you hear a lot about Treasury issuance and the debt. And I think we've all known for a long time that the debt in the United States continues to go high, but now it seems like that what's happening in Washington is having a greater impact on interest rates than maybe what it did 10 or 15 years ago. So when you see that the government continues to issue Treasury debt, and there aren't as many buyers who are interested in buying it, that seems to be having as big of impact on interest rates as unemployment, as an example. Is that partly true?
I don't disagree with that. I think the fact that we're at these high yields right now makes financing that debt even more challenging. And in some ways, you might play this out to where the Fed is kind of forced to make a more quicker decisions because, again, I think we can acknowledge that the math isn't pretty. And, we bring about election year, we bring about different data points, this war that has seemed to kind of come out of nowhere for it. That was one data point no one expected, was a Middle East war. And just like what occurred when the Ukraine war came into play, like there's a reality that liquidity or the cost associated with the U.S. is going to take a burden. Like they're going to take and rightfully so, they're going to want to help. But the reality is financing it is still going to cause more debt to be incurred. So to your point, when we're issuing that debt, we have to adhere to the same rates as everybody else. And so that's what makes this really interesting is the cost that's associated with the financing of that debt. I think is the biggest piece that we're watching is how far can we take this and how long until something gives. And I think the Fed is kind of painting themselves into a corner to have to make some really tough decisions. And I think they're done hiking for one. And I think the next pace is like, they've got to get some relief. And they're the ones kind of holding the cards. So I think that's a really fair point, and I'm glad you bring it up.
Yeah, great. Well, we know that it's difficult and your job is difficult and the job of your team is extremely difficult. And as we said earlier, we couldn't be more thrilled to have you on our team. You bring a different perspective to the job. And I think everybody listening to this podcast should be really encouraged that you're here and that I think you're going to continue to do great things. And we're going to continue to hold you accountable for all the promises that you've already made relative to profit and all those things that we've talked about that you've kind of put yourself out on that we won't get into here today, but we know what they are. But it's great to have you on your team, and look forward to maybe having you on future episodes so that we can figure out whether you were right or you were wrong. But either way, we'll still love you, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
We're gonna pivot into a segment or a portion of this segment that we're calling the Game of Loans. So I believe our trusted producer Katie has sent you some questions, and the way this is going to work is that KB and I haven't seen any of these questions, so you're gonna shoot them at us, and we're gonna figure out whether or not we're as smart as you are. And I'm very fearful because I feel like I'm going to fail miserably here, but I'll give it my best shot.
Well, me personally speaking, Game of Thrones was pretty epic. And so I'm just honored to be not on the receiving end of these questions, but putting you all in the hot seat. So,
okay. Well, Andrew, wait a minute, Andrew, before you ask the first one, Al, was Game of Thrones epic for you? Because it was for me too, Andrew. Al?
I've never seen it. I've heard of it.
What?
I'm told there's 7 seasons. Yeah. Sorry.
That kind of gives, I think, Karen the upper hand in this.
I know, if I don't win now, it's going to be really bad.
I'll go ahead and on separate monitor from this, go ahead and pull up Google, because that's the only way you're going to stand a chance now.
Well, let's see how we do.
All right. Question number 1. And maybe this is for those listening at home here, like, this will be fun for them as well. But let's get to it. Okay. If Khaleesi's dragon burnt her house down, would that be covered under the standard homeowners insurance policy? Yes or no?
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I don't know if they specified dragons, but I'm going to go with a yes too.
I mean, I think we have to go with yes. I mean, no one reads the fine print, so if there was an out, I'm sure they forgot dragon. so,
Actually, in some insurance policy, doesn't it spell it has to be an act of, or it does not include an act of God?
Yeah.
Right? Isn't
right? Yeah.
So
gods of folklore, I guess, would be inclusive of that.
Exactly.
Okay, next question. All right. If Jon Snow, that's the hero of the show, just so you know. If Jon Snow bought a house for $500,000 in Winterfell, and Cersei Lannister bought the same house for $1 million in King's Landing, who has the bigger house?
Okay, well, first of all, Jon Snow's house is an igloo, and we don't insure igloos because he's way up at the North
What if
Wall.
it's a speck? If it's a speck, would that count?
Yeah, spec igloo. It doesn't ever warm up, so it's never going to melt. But okay, so who has the better value?
Who's got the bigger house?
I think John's got the bigger house.
They threw this out there, and I just was curious because I don't think I would have gotten this right. They're actually the exact same house. It's just a play on, evidently.
Oh, all right.
That one may fall flat. I'm just going to keep going so we don't get stuck and spoil any of the reviews on this podcast here. All right, next question. Which Game of Thrones character would be the worst loan officer because he knows nothing about mortgages?
Al, you want to jump in?
Karen, you better get this. Blank knows nothing. I'm going to say Jamie Lancaster because he is the meanest character on that show. And we are not mean to people getting a mortgage. That is not the way to be. I also don't think he knows anything, but he is a ruler for a while, so he probably acts like he does. Well, Karen, I'll just comment because I have no hope in Al. Apparently, Karen, you as well know nothing because Jon Snow knows nothing. Jon Snow knows nothing. That's the whole line of the whole. We need to take it back to season 1. You know nothing, Jon Snow. That's the whole tagline of the whole series.
I think I would have gotten
TV.
That is like the haters of Game of Thrones. That is not for real.
That is literally what they tell Jon Snow. You know nothing.
Well,
and
I guess that's episode 1, right, Andrew? Is that an episode 1?
I mean, it might as well be because
that's where I'm going to start.
I'm sensing if there's commentary feeding in somewhere, there'd be some haters right now throwing shade because you didn't know that, Karen. Okay.
I'm going to be quiet. I'm better off pretending I've never watched the show at this point.
I mean, that you just set the bar and you just came way under. All right, moving on. Which house name would likely be the best candidate for a mortgage because they always pay their debts? It rhymes with Rannister.
Lannister?
Yeah, hey. You get a point. At least someone's on the board.
Woo!
At least someone's on the board. All right.
1-0.
Hey, this is for all the marbles. We'll cut the slate clean. If someone answers correctly, this is the last question. Which mortgage event would most likely be attributed to the Red Wedding? Okay. And the answer, it'll say, so here's the response. Getting your mortgage approved with an astonishing low interest rate. This one is impossible. I'm going to stop right here. Do we remember the Red Wedding in the show?
I do not. There were so many weddings.
Yeah, and I'm sure this was whoever created the segment assumed someone knew about Game of Thrones. I don't know this one either. But the answer is, for anyone watching at home or listening, the mortgage lender turning out to be a faceless man is evidently what mortgage event would be attributed to the Red Wedding. I'm not even certain I know what that means, and hopefully there's just enough entertainment value to make this whole segment worth it. So,
we clearly showed that you are the brain that we said you were, Andrew.
I'm just trying to roll with it here. Back to you.
I think we might need to have you come and do this segment every episode because
Yeah, we'll
you,
we'll get a list of shows that Al's familiar with, and
Yeah.
What is it, like
and we'll
Three's
go from
Company
there.
or like Odd Couple, maybe, Al? Or what's your tiers?
I don't know, Gone with the Wind. Can we do movies? Can we do movies for 500, Phil?
Forrest Gump.
Oh
Yeah.
man, Andrew, thank you, man. Thank you for being brave enough to be our first guest on the East versus West, East meets West podcast, and we really appreciate it, man. We'll let you get back to your busy day, but our final segment is going to be Clear to Close. Okay, so as I'm thinking about some takeaways from Andrew, other than the fact that he's better at Game of Loans / Game of Thrones trivia than Al and I combined, man, he talked about, I think, pretty much saying that we're through the worst of this and that we're going to see some improvement starting sometime in the next couple quarters. Talked a little bit about what's causing this and just how complicated it is in terms of all the economic factors and not all of them working in sync. And then you have something completely unforeseen, like the situation in the Middle East that happens. And it really, it actually has, worldwide effect on the markets. And then he went ahead and took the high dive and said, he thinks rates are going to be in the sixes by the second quarter of next year. Those were my takeaways anyway, Al. How about you?
Well, yeah, we'll take it. Let's hope we can get to that point. I think everybody listening or watching this is ready for better times, and they're ahead. We've been through cycles before, and this one is a little different, but we're going to get through it. Everybody's working together, and we're excited for the next chapter because it seems like we've been stuck in the mud, but we're strong, we're resilient, and more importantly, we're together, and all those things are important. So just a couple things to wrap it up here. We're gonna be doing more podcasts to come. I think our plan is to release 2 episodes before next year, and then in 2024 we're going to release more. Probably do them bi-weekly. So we're excited about that, and we've identified our next guest is going to be Mark Raskin, who is our Bent Tree branch manager. So we're excited to have Mark on here. Mark has been at PrimeLending for many years, and he actually, I think I may have shared this with him before, but the conversation that he and I had many months ago was really got me thinking about this podcast and the reasons why we wanted to do it. So it's going to be fun to talk to Mark, gain from his experience. He's obviously been through many different markets, and he's an interesting guy and somebody that I know everybody respects, and they'll enjoy our conversation with him. So look forward to us talking to Mark. We look forward to bringing more fun content in the year to come. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you the next time.